Welcome guys to grading the top tier teams of North America in Valorant. And yes, we're gonna do the top 8 teams that I believe are still in the top, regardless of results and stuff. We're looking at the top organizations in Valorant. So the first team we gotta look at is TSM. TSM gets an A, even though they've amassed a total of $100,000 in earnings, showing how many events they competed in and the amount of events they have won. This roster has been together since the infancy of Valorant, and the most notable event for them was finishing second place in First Strike. And if they got a few more rounds and made it a best of 5, who knows, maybe we would be saying that these guys were the winners of First Strike. Obviously that didn't happen, so they get an A and not an A+. Key players are Wardell, Sabrosa, and Drone, being supported by Hayes and Cutler. All three of these guys can pop off. All three average an average combat score of 200 plus. Wardell in 2020 put up ridiculous numbers before the op nerf. It looked like the hard carry for these guys, but even with the op nerf, he still looks just as good, to be honest. Sabrosa is devastating in 1v1s and lurks. His aim is very flicky, very crisp. He exudes confidence. Drone is the most consistent player in my opinion out of the three, and he showcases the best use of Phoenix in North America. In 2021, TSM will be looking towards the VCT or the Valorant Championship Tour and prove that they are global champions. T1, early giants of Valorant making big name moves like acquiring Brax and Ska. This roster looked like a favorite to become an early dynasty in Valorant, and winning Twitch rivals against TSM, it looked like T1 had it. This was literally the infancy of Valorant. Things changed fast for T1. Roster changes galore. But at the end of 2020, I see a form of consistency building, but I still give them a C- due to a huge rough patch spanning from July to November and the amount of money T1 spent to build their roster. Total earnings was still $40,000 roughly, and their notable events was the first place in Twitch Rivals and the semifinals in First Strike against 100 Thieves. This team, right? They give you hope and then they disappoint you. They give you hope and then they disappoint you. In 2021, I hope they can find consistency so I'm not disappointed by this roster. But let's continue. Key players are Brax for sure. This guy is ridiculously consistent on a Sentinel and primary lurker for T1. I watch Brax and I'm dumbfounded by how good his positioning skills are and how low his sense is. Days, the new IGL, will steer these guys to victories in 2021 in my opinion. Now I think he is key because he has implemented a style and a lease for players like Ska and Spider to frag out. The final key player has to be Ska. Due to all the drama surrounding him and him being benched, we can see how much he grinds to get better at the game. He's ridiculously comfortable on the jet and how he's adapted his style of opping for the team. He used to be a passive opper, but now he looks for aggressive op picks, knowing that he can dash away with jet. Another player I think will become their best player in the future, in my opinion, has to be Spider. His raw aim is frightening to think about. He's no longer on the Omen and he's playing the duelist role. And I do truly believe that Spider could be a mechanical god in 2021. Looking at Cloud9, they get a C. Before the failure of qualifying during First Strike, it looked like Cloud9 builds a reputation of being the top 3 team in NA. But this all crumbled after First Strike qualifiers. It could have been ego issues or not trusting the calls and strats of Shinobi. I'm not too sure what went on, the internal issues of Cloud9. But like during the First Strike qualifiers and after the qualifiers, even Tens, who was very consistent and put up ridiculous stats, started underperforming. In my opinion, Cloud9 has one of the best talents in Valorant in Tens, so the org should be a little more proactive and give him certain players so Cloud9 can go and win tournaments. The total earnings for Cloud9 was $23,250, and their most notable event was a 3rd place finish in Pop Flash. Just not enough tournament wins, even though this was one of the earlier rosters from the Ignition days. The roster could be something, but in 2021, they will have to find a way to build consistency and momentum. The fifth player on this roster will be key to how Cloud9 will perform in 2021. With TenZ on the team, you're always going to have a threat. You have the best player in North America. Just statistically, he proves it every time. We'll see. We will see. I'm a fan of Cloud9, but they got to get a C, right? I wanted to rate them a D, but I have to give them a C here because in the early days, they were showing really good consistency, and they do beat a lot of the top teams in NA. So we'll see with Cloud9. 100 Thieves. They get an A+, and that's due to them being the first NA team to win a sponsored Riot event. They won First Strike. They look like they have all the pieces together. They look like a well-oiled machine. And you gotta thank Nadeshot for this. The initiative to rebuild the roster and splash the cash on Nitro and Steel was a great move by the organization and by Nadeshot. He put a lot of eggs in one basket, but it looks like it proved alright during First Strike. This roster has a lot of experience and talent, looking like a team that has been playing longer than 2 to 3 months. Their total earnings was $45,000. Key players are definitely Asuna, Steel the IGL, and Nitro, who I consider as Mr. Consistent for this roster. Steel, Hiko, and Nitro's experience alone will carry this team to many more finals. And in 2021, they gotta prove to the world that they are the best team. And they have to go against the likes of Vision Strikers, G2, Heretics, Absolute Jupiter. That's going to be an interesting part, right? Seeing them in the globals, and will they even qualify to the Valorant Championship Tour? I'm not going to talk too much about 100 Thieves because we just did a video on them, but they definitely get an A+. And from their ignition days, they look super underwhelming. And then now look at them. They got an elite roster. They got young talent. They're looking really good. Sentinels, I give them an A over the course of 2020. And this team is very exciting to watch in terms of playstyle. You got Sinatra jumping out of hookah with a blast pack or with a Phoenix Flash. You have Sick, who's so versatile on every agent. You have Dapper, a freaking lockdown anchor. You have Zombs, another lockdown anchor type of player. And you got Shazam, an IGLing on the jet. Sentinels are a well-oiled machine in terms of scaling, trading, and playing with a certain swagger that other teams do not really do. They definitely abuse tactical crouch, and they're just a fun team to watch. Sens have won a total of $90,000, rivaling the likes of TSM in that category. Key players are Sick, who's very versatile in agent selection, Sinatra, who's a methodical madman with his Odin and aggression, and last but not least, Shazam, who IGLs the team. Notable events: the last tourney was JBL with big names involved, and they won that tournament. Sen struggled to beat 100 Thieves in First Strike, but during this time, let's not forget, the IGL Shazam just lost his father, and his mentality was definitely not at its peak, and also 2 weeks without scrims before First Strike, and Sinatra out injured for 2 to 3 weeks with an eye injury before First Strike qualifiers. So Sens didn't really have too much practice and too much time on the lab, but they still made it all the way to the semifinals in First Strike. So I'm not trying to put too many excuses, but it just shows the caliber of Sentinels, even without practice and hardships, that they continue to play their game and they play well. Going into 2021, Sens looks like one of the top threats going into Valorant Championship Tour. Team Envy. These guys get a B-, unfortunately, and this is due to the overhype from pros, analysts, and fans. But they were supposed to be favorites to go and win First Strike. The hype was strong for these guys. But then in the First Strike semifinals, Envy got outclassed by TSM. TSM looked composed and Envy looked very shaky. But if they can play like they do on scrims, then this team should be a very scary threat. Envy's total earnings were $34,000, and their notable event was Pop Flash, coming second in that tournament. And then after the Pop Flash tournament, They acquired food and crashes from T1. Now with these two additions, this roster was supposed to be this so-called powerhouse. There are a lot of questions that FNS, the IGL, has to worry about going into 2021. Should Food still be a duelist? Or Caboose and Mummy, should they be the primary duelists with Food on Omen? Or should Mummy continue to op with Omen? There's gonna be a lot of questions for FNS, but I know he's the right man to get these solutions and make Envy a really strong team. The key players on Envy, in my opinion, are FNS, Mame, and Caboose. Even though I rate both Crashies and Food, it's just that the previously mentioned players are the core of the team. They've been together since beta, so they have very good consistency in their play, and they look like they play and they mesh well together. Going into 2021, Envy should still be a top 5 contender in NA, and hopefully we see what they can do in scrims and they can show it in actual matches. Now, before you guys freak out and say how dare you give Gen.G a B+ and T1 a C-. Well, Gen.G competes in all types of events spanning from Tier 1 and Tier 2, but these guys consistently go far in a lot of events and continue to make roster changes even though they go far in a lot of tourneys. They want to be winners, that's why they make these roster changes. They play in a lot of events, they don't have an off season, they continue the grind, they want to be the best. And Gen.G, they have lower expectations than T1, TSM, Sentinels, but these guys grind and they want to be the best, and I just like how this organization is running things. Gen.G are a very underrated team in my opinion, and have some key pieces on their team to make a run for the top spot in NA. Total earnings was 47,000 roughly, and they recently just won Nights Before Christmas. In terms of spending wise from the org and picking up talent like Sean, Gen.G are punching above their weight and could be a solid team if they get another strong addition to replace Player 1. Key players here are their fraggers and Sean and Huin. Huin is a very underrated op player and may not put ridiculous numbers like Tens or Wardell, but he's very consistent, averaging 226 average combat score and about 1500 games plus, 1500 rounds plus. Gen.G is definitely a top tier team in 2021. If they can learn to beat the likes of TSM and Sens more often, then watch out for Gen.G. They play Valorant in a good pace and in a good manner, and they're competitive, they continue the grind events, and I just like that they're getting a lot of experience ahead of the likes of T1, Cloud9. They just have more events played than those guys, right? So I give these guys a B+. Faze Clan gets a B- in terms of how they have improved against top tier teams. Faze's roster have probably the best raw aim potential. Corey is nuts, Marv has cracked aim, and Baby Bay is becoming more aggressive every game on the jet. Faze's total earnings throughout 2020 was $26,000 roughly, and their notable events was making into First Strike. Key players are Corey, Marv the IGL with the most tactical shooter experience, and Baby Bay who seems to be a really strong duelist. The roster has potential in 2021, but in my opinion, they do need to get a coach, and a good coach for them would be Shinobi or Mike's HD, former G2 coach. What FaZe needs is just to get a bit better of a strategy book, having better executions, and in terms of 1v1 duels, they're always going to be up there, a top 3 team in terms of just pure aim. These guys are crazy with their aim. I don't know if you notice, but FaZe up when it comes to their cracked aim. So they get a B- in my opinion though. That they're doing okay. They didn't have crazy expectations, and I think they're going to suffer for that syndrome of a lot of people are just going to be like saying, well, they got a lot of potential, but eventually in 2021 that excuse will run out because potential can only be an excuse for so long. So we'll see in 2021. Well guys, that was my grades for 2020. Now 2021 is here, and there's going to be a lot of exciting competitive Valorant, especially at Riot Games, pushing out agents and new maps. Hopefully we get LAN and have even crazier matches live. But if you guys like this content and you like the grading videos, well, I can grade tier 2 North American teams, and we can look at Europe. I can study European teams, and we can do that. So comment down below, what are your grades for these teams? And let me know if my grades were wrong. Maybe Cloud9 deserves an A+, and TSM deserves an F. I'm not too sure, but I think these grades were pretty solid. I wasn't too harsh, and I was pretty forgiving. What you guys think? If you like this type of content, sauce a like, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you guys on the flip side.